Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, You Demand We Work Overtime for Free? Enjoy trying to open the store with no employees. Unfortunately, this story came back to mind due to the recent death of the hero of the story. Grumpy, you will be missed. I've met Grumpy in Narcotics Anonymous. He volunteered there after they helped him and became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my crap together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was the manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks, to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling the trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company, it plays an important for later. When they started, back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick and mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom cupboards and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. The stores were basically big warehouses. In mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which accompanied by a rising trend of DIY, skyrocketed their sales. That brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store, first only with phone orders and later with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't a big seller, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers, custom-made furniture, landscaping, tools and, for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job was a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company roughly the same age I was and being promoted through the ranks, had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple: if my employees are happy, they work better and provide better services, which leads to better sales. That meant that while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to others, we were fourth in revenue nationwide and first in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname Stroke. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had left him with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. HQ decided to not have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy, he was in his late 20s, Grumpy was in his late 30s, had a business degree and he hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty space in the stores. A supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced by one of our tellers, who had worked for them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm didn't help also. His managerial style was based in only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started by changing our schedule from monthly to weekly, raising the sales targets to unrealistic heights and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 experienced people had left, 4 quitted and 2 fired, and replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then, the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had first helped the two guys of the supermarket unload their trucks first, because their products were perishable, and then started loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked 5 o'clock to 1300. We loaded first the trucks that had longer to travel, so they will be ready to leave at 7 o'clock at the latest. The company had a next day delivery policy for a 150 miles radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading out trucks before 7:30 and they couldn't start their route before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours, 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So, from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess also, started turning personnel faster than a dollar hooker. Anyone who is staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but customer happiness is plummeting fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit. But our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks in the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor, riding a pure white horse, carrying a legendary sword. He is in a normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now he is back. We are informed that Grumpy will be on light duties for 2 weeks, before he becomes the manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and makes it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he caught us complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him get his sea legs back. But another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as bad as he did to us, they would quit and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller. So, the head carpenter has a meeting with Grumpy on his second day talking about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled the beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy has meetings with everyone, learning what Wilhelm had done and why we had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He had also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come that he is the manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as a manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution, so gather in the store after closing hours. And Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him. Which we did, when we started getting calls about the store being closed. Grumpy's answer to the HQ was simple: the staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught HQ's attention, because nothing of the sort was reported in the past 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies. Which brought a shitstorm on Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with the supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign overtime, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm quickly got fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look on the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore and a lot of theirs jumped ship to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 did a stellar job, leading to be promoted to managers in other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to a rise of sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had. Next one is titled, A Brother's Revenge. This happened back in 2008 when we were doing the electrical on a 5-story 48-unit condo building. I'm from a family of electricians. I'm an electrician, my brother is, and we both worked for our dad, who used to own a very well-respected company. My brother and I were working in a unit on the 4th floor stringing some cable. We're far enough into the project that the exterior doors, windows are all installed, albeit with no hardware, but the ceilings are still wide open for the trades to do our thing. I went to grab some material, and when I came back, my brother has a poo-eating grin on his face with my tools all over the floor and my tool pouch hanging 15 feet up from a pipe, not a ladder in sight. I find a ladder, get my stuff all straightened out, and we're back to work after 15 minutes of dicking around. The little ducker wouldn't set his tools down, kept his pouch on him all day. Fast forward 2 days, and my little bro leaves a unit to go grab something, but took off his pouch. He came back to me wearing a poo-eating grin, his tools all over the floor and his tool pouch hanging in plain view on the balcony railing with a single screwdriver in it. The screwdriver he needs to unscrew the board holding the door shut to get his pouch. I miss those days, good simple times. Next one is titled, Don't Want to Help Me Because I Want an Inexpensive Ring. Fine. I'll spend more. Backstory, my fiancé and I originally planned on getting wedding rings on Etsy so they'd be something we liked. I don't like expensive things and I think diamonds are a ridiculous thing to spend money on. We had gone into a few stores before and was met with racism at one, we're an interracial couple, and sexism at another. I also make a point not to get dressed up nice when I'm going to buy something expensive because I don't want someone who picks the wealthiest looking people to help. My fiancé live a cheap life, so we have quite a bit of money saved up. We decided to make one last stop before we gave up on actual jewelers. The employee, let's call him Chad, finishes with his customer and lets them out and lets us in. He asks what we're looking for and I told him wedding rings. His face lights up and he walks me to the expensive diamond rings. I told him I wasn't into diamonds because I like a bit of color in my jewelry. Cue face drop. Well, we have our more economical section over here, and leads me to the far corner and proceeds to ignore me while I ask questions and try to make polite conversation. Clearly he doesn't want to waste his time on me. He mentions he has something in the back similar to the one I loved and he walks off. I look over to find him and see him talking with another guy and hand him my ring. This guy is about 20 years older than Chad and he's super excited to help me. He's pulling out rings left and right, running around the store for me, looking at prices before he hands me something, and I settled on my $150 ring. Then we went to help my fiancé. He really likes a $1,400 ring and the nice guy, we'll call him Dave, said he'd take 50% off for him. I encouraged my fiancé to get it, and while he's considering it I'm looking at the tiny diamond bands. Nice guy Dave comes over and starts getting excited and pulling stuff out, checking price tags and putting them back or handing them to me. Took us about an hour of nice guy Dave running around like a kid in a candy shop, but I decided to get a cute diamond band as well. We ended up spending a couple thousand more than we planned on, and in this time, Chad had been dealing with a woman dressed to the nines who walked out with nothing and was now waiting for us to leave so they could close up. We go to leave with the rings and Chad set up the transaction and was fuming when he saw how much we spent. It wasn't a ton, but it was definitely more than the zero the other lady spent. Chad swiped our card and was probably upset that not only did we spend 10 times more than he thought we would, but that we used a debit card instead of the store credit card. Just to address a couple of things, even though I caved and got diamonds, I still think it's ridiculous. If I could have gotten fake diamonds I would have, but sadly, it wasn't an option. Chad did not get any commission on the sale, I made sure of it today. They do split commission if multiple people help, but he wasn't listed on the receipt and I called to be sure. Also, I guess I have to watch Pretty Woman now since I have no clue what you guys are talking about. Next one is titled, Don't want to eat the food I make because you think I'll use it to blackmail you? Okay, then I'll make the best dinner ever. Little bit of backstory for you. I, 15 female, will sometimes make dinner for me and my brother, 12 male, if I feel up for it. My parents and older sister aren't usually home, so it's kinda up to me. My family also has a dog, Olive. We don't have a fenced-in backyard, so he has to go on walks around the block each time we take him out. Last night I asked my brother, I'll call him in this story, what he wanted for dinner. He said he didn't want to eat anything I make anymore because I'll use it to blackmail him into walking the dog. Opening parenthesis, question mark, closing parenthesis. I think I meant it like, I made you dinner so now you have to walk the dog for me, which I never do. We have a system for walking Olive, we just alternate. So anyway, he said he wouldn't eat the food I make anymore, which kinda hurt because I make us dinner a lot and I get in trouble if he doesn't eat. So I had a thought, make a bussin' dinner that he can't have, so I got started. I grabbed some biscuits to bake in the oven. It was a pack of 8. I made 2 cheddar biscuits, 2 garlic bread biscuits, and 4 cinnamon sugar biscuits. Then onto the pasta recipe. I made rigatoni pasta and spiced up the tomato sauce with roasted minced garlic and chopped basil. Then I thought, crap, I gotta have some vegetables with this. So I grabbed some frozen sweet corn and added seasonings and spices. The corn was ducking amazing. And a salad with Italian dressing and herb croutons. I literally felt so proud of myself. I've been in ed recovery for a while and this was just amazing to me. Of course, eventually I came downstairs and said that something smelled good, and I looked him in the eyes and said, not to you it doesn't. After I had finished my dinner, I didn't eat all of it. I make her some chicken nuggets and a salad. He was a little disappointed, but hey, duck him. After I was done cooking, I put the food on low heat while I walked Olive, set my food down in front of the TV, put on One Piece anime, and ate my heavenly dinner while I ate his sad chicken nuggets and salad. Next one is titled, Talk Smack to the Boss, Get the Duck Out. So after I left my first job as a junior engineer in a safety department, my boss recommended me for a lead position for a different company. I got it, and the position came with 3 senior already on the team and a junior. When I was hired on, I was able to hire 2 new junior engineers for a full team. I'll have to give you a bit of information about the office. It was a full floor of a mid-size building near Kitchener, Ontario. My department's office setup was completely open. All our workspaces, desks and equipment was out in the open. No offices, no cubicles, but we had one full enclosed meeting room. My desk was near the entrances of the floor, just near the elevators. Right next was my assistant secretary. Also, a little about me is I like to always dress up nicely. Even at home I am almost always in a dress. At the office was the same, usually a red or violet business-ish dress. That day I had 10 to 15 interviews set up, and we positioned my desk to be near some chairs where I would greet and act as a welcome before the candidate would be moved to the meeting room via my secretary. Mostly because you can get a good judge of character of a person if you're the first person they interact with and know nothing about you. Midway through the day in walks Mr. Hotshot, a young fresh out of university cocky sob. And you know his first thing he did was walk right up to my desk with a, "Hey honey, I am here for an interview." I signed him in and I was met with, "So yeah, can you go get me a coffee?" I was really shocked, but I was like, oh whatever, in my mind, but the dude just didn't shut up, proclaiming he was the #1 candidate, that this job is his and 100% that in a year he would be running the office. Not a good thing to say to someone you would be working under. But yeah, my secretary came up and escorted Mr. Hotshot to the meeting room, and I went and got him a cup of coffee. I made my way to the meeting room and set it down in front of him and sat down in the big boss chair and introduced myself. My exact words were, "Hello, my name is Mrs. Bunny and I hope you like your coffee because you're not getting this job. It was a pleasure meeting you, have a nice day." He left in a bit of a huff. I know it was petty of me, but he upset me so much. Oh, I ended up hiring an older gentleman in his 50s who, after going back to school in his late 40s, managed to get a degree. He was a very smart, humble man who, after a year, was leading his own team on a build site. Next one is titled, Cashier Had My Back. This is rather mild compared to most of the posts on this sub, but I figured you all would appreciate this moment as much as I did. I was in line at a grocery store cashing out a 12 PK. A woman walks towards me and takes her place in line, however instead of standing behind me in line she decided to stand right beside me. The woman in front of me finishes her transaction and what do you know, the lady beside me actually pushes past me and tries to cut me. Honestly, in my head, I was about to just let her go because she clearly was in a much bigger rush than I, and I personally didn't mind waiting an extra 2 minutes. No big deal to me. However, the awesome cashier, who has cashed me out frequently, says to her, I'm sorry but she was waiting here before you. The lady scoffs and steps aside. With a huge smile I make sure to have a nice and lengthy, "How's your day?" "Yeah, thank God it's Friday. Did you do anything fun on Halloween?" chat with the cashier. She knew, I knew. The whole time I felt the lady in a rush's eyes burning a hole in the back of my head, and I was just loving every minute of it. Thanks, awesome cashier. Last one is titled, Mind Your Space on the Plane. I got on this cross-country flight to Boston. I was one of the last to board, so obviously the window and aisle people in my row had already decided to take over the empty seat. Aisle guy kind of gave me a look but then let me have some space. Window guy, decked head to toe in Red Sox gear, was basically sitting spread eagle with his left leg all the way into my leg space. I asked if he minded moving a bit and he immediately starts in with, "No man, I was here first," sucks his teeth, etc. So the whole flight I kept my leg pressed into his because I had a feeling he was a guy who'd hate that. After maybe an hour he finally repositioned after more tooth sucking, but I kept my leg against his the whole time. He'd occasionally shove his leg into mine to push it off, but I persisted. By this point I had worked my leg across the border of his seat space. Anyway, I enjoyed making him squirm the whole flight with the leg-on-leg contact. When we were finally in Boston and leaving the plane, I flipped the lock on my tray table and let it drop down when stepping out so he'd have to put his bag down and flip the table back up before being able to get out. Thanks for listening.